truth,
love,
and the good.
here we go.
Welcome to the DTPHD Podcast. I'm David Tian, your host, together with our co-host, Henry Chong.
Yes, hello again.
We're here at CM Reap at the end of a mastermind summit. We've been looking at some deep things, some emotionally turmoilic, is that even a word? I've just made it one, issues. And one of the issues that came up, that comes up a lot in groups of achievers, is being hard on yourself. So that's what I call it. We'll talk about that. And, should we just dig into it?
Yep.
And this is a very historic place, CM Reap, Angkor Wat, and these amazing temples that come from the 12th century. So you can think about being hard on yourself as a theme in Asian culture. So that is true. But also, there is a device called the Pavlok or something along those lines that I've seen a friend of mine wear, and he gave it to me to try it on. And so basically, it's an electric shock device. It's a wristband that you set to shock yourself electrically. And I saw it, so I tried it. It was very painful at the maximum setting. So it was like a nice little joke from my friend, like, hey, try it on. And you're like, fuck that. And I just saw the red bar going. And I just watched Shark Tank. Now that episode that the founder of Pavlok was on is now 3 or 4 years old, but I just saw it. And it was very interesting, and got me thinking about the effects of being really hard on yourself psychologically, the long-term effects. And many of us treat ourselves like animals, because that's where this originally comes from aversive conditioning. And if you think about, like, how do you get a dog to stop barking at the wrong times? You put a shock collar on it. Every time it barks or growls or just does something like that, you can just shock it, and it's supposed to learn to stop doing that. And this is called aversive conditioning. You give it adversity and it conditions it not to do that thing. And people are basically treating themselves this way in order to get more results. I kind of hate that word these days. I keep hearing it. Will it get me results? Results. Well, it depends what you mean by results. But most of the world just wants results in terms of 3 or 4 things: money, women, power, and they all boil down to esteem of some kind. So aversive conditioning is being hard on yourself as a way to get those things, those goals. And one thing that we covered today, so in today's session, we went into Gestalt psychology. We looked at how your relationships repeat the cycle of your childhood. And it's pretty deep, so I'm not going to try to summarize it in a few minutes, but we did a whole day and a half on that. That video will be released at some point on our other channel, or maybe on this channel. And it's directly related to this, because what happens is when you aren't allowed to feel something, okay, so especially as a child, it gets that control, like self-control that you think is a good thing, gets sublimated in a way, right? It gets suppressed and repression. The repression then takes hold over the body. So you can actually see the effects of that repression of the aversive conditioning on the physical body. And I have no idea what the founder is like now. I don't know him personally. I have friends of him, his appearance on Shark Tank, the show, the TV show, which again was 3 or 4 years ago, it was fascinating because he had that steely demeanor, he had that kind of like constricted physiology that set off Mark Cuban real bad. He really didn't like this guy. And a couple of the other people really didn't, they knew they couldn't trust him. It was a little shady. But at the end of the day, at the end of the session, the only guy who gave him an offer was Kevin O'Leary, the Mr. Wonderful, kind of like the bad guy in the panel. And at the end, so throughout that, he had this shifting face, like this face that was hardened. It was hardened because, like, you don't get to do what you really want to do. You've got to buzz yourself, you just zap yourself so that you'll force yourself to do this other thing, to be this other way. And you end up repressing quite a lot. And even at one point said, because the judges or the panel was talking amongst themselves, it's like, you guys are giving me ADD. And they're like, we're giving you ADD? So it's this thing, I don't want to talk too much about the device because it will encourage you to actually buy it. What will happen is, what I've discovered and what all the research I've done in psychology shows that if you punish yourself to make yourself be a certain way, the effects will be repression, and the more you punish yourself, the more effects of repression you'll have in your physical body, in your psychology. And very few people actually are aware of that.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I think that at the end of the day, all kinds of motivation can be separated into push and pull motivation, right? Are you being pulled along the path by, the desire for some endpoint, or are you being pushed by some factor? Obviously, direct pain, pleasure, rewards is one way, as you say, using a shock collar on a dog. But certainly when it comes to humans, I think pull motivation is much stronger than push motivation. If nothing else, because the push motivation only lasts as long as you have that push. So, if you're using a Pavlov wristband, the hope is that you use it enough that you form a habit that will continue when you're no longer using the wristband. Otherwise, you're just being shocked forever. But, maybe that can work. But I think a lot of evidence, at least anecdotal evidence, shows that it doesn't last, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's a great idea for you to get together with a few friends and you say, we've got this weight loss challenge and, we all put some money in. And so there's some kind of punishment reward, or the classic, you've got to post pictures of yourself to Facebook every week, right? These are sort of push incentives, right? I don't want something to happen, so therefore I'll go to the gym. But you're only going to the gym because of that push force. Versus it's very different if you say, you know what, I wanted to go to the gym because I want that outcome. Because no matter what it is that you do, going to the gym is one example, it's never pleasant in between. That's why you're not already doing it, right? If it was so easy, you'd be doing it anyway. So the truth is there are a lot of things that make you not want to do it. And in order to overcome these on a long-term basis, you must have some motivating factor even bigger that will get you over that hump. Mm-hmm. And I think people can only grind it out so long, right? That's something that people talk about a lot, right? Just keep pushing, right. Keep grinding. It doesn't last, right? Sooner or later, you wear yourself out.
Right. A great proponent of the grind philosophy is Gary Vaynerchuk, a guy I admire quite a bit. And the thing is, for him, it's not actually grind. Like he says it's grind, and that's a word that resonates with people because they don't like it. So to them, it feels like grind. But he loves the grind, in which case You've changed the meaning of what grind is.
And not only that, but he has a motivating force that's pulling him
that's why
he has a clear objective, and he says, I know exactly what I want. This is what I need to do it. And so each and every day I'm going to show up. Yeah. And I'm going to grind, but I'm going to grind because I want that thing.
Right. So you're actually saying it won't even work. Like I'm granting that maybe it will work. They could quit smoking or quit picking out.
Maybe it will, and maybe for a short term. But I think certainly in terms of the magnitude of effect, it's weaker. And I think in terms of duration, it's also weaker.
Yeah, it's a lot more taxing,
especially if you're trying to not do something simple. Maybe if it's I need to brush my teeth, I need to floss every morning, right? And this is app called Coach.me or something. Simple things like floss every morning, probably. But if you're trying to achieve something huge, you're trying to build a company, you're trying to buy the jets, whatever it is.
I think zapping yourself to floss is really stupid.
Yeah, but whatever it is, if the goal is big enough. Those small push motivations I don't think are enough, because if the goal is big enough, the task is also very, very hard. And if you're trying to push at the very edge of what is possible, the only thing that will ever get you there is some massive pull motivation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So it could be like, how bad do you want it? Like, if you want it enough, you shouldn't have to beat yourself to get there. And here's the reason why I think they don't want it enough. So if you need to get a Pavlov bracelet, if you're at that point, I have friends who have it. And I think somebody in this room has ordered it. Have you gotten it yet? You got it, right? Did you get it yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so it's coming in the mail? Oh, it's in Singapore. Okay, so I'm kind of aware of, so we're talking to some of the other guys in the room here at our summit. So I'm kind of aware of some of the issues. One of them is like getting up on time, right? Like, so I think that's one of the ones. So diet and waking up are the most common uses of it. And it's like an alarm clock of some kind. And what you should be asking yourself instead to get out of this situation is, let me come at it a different way. If you're using pain to force yourself to get that result, it's actually going to distract you from the underlying real issues. So let's say you're at a job you hate, and that's why you don't like to get up in the morning. But you buy a device that zaps you to get there. So you'll get to your job. But now you've stopped asking yourself the deeper questions of, why am I sleeping in? Is it because I don't like my job? That's a simple example, but it could be another one, like it could be you're not going to the gym or you're pigging out. Well, and then every time you eat some ice cream, you zap yourself. And the hope is you're going to start associating pain to ice cream, which is a horrible thing. Ice cream is a wonderful thing. But you should, instead of asking yourself, why am I seeking solace in the ice cream? Right? Because there's some underlying issue. Could it be that your relationship is falling apart and you're stressed out, you're doing that? Could it be that you're underperforming at work, so you seek comfort there? Or could it be that your father died, you haven't confronted the grief, and so you bury yourself in the ice cream? There's so many reasons that eating could become a comfort device for not facing your issues or not resolving them. And instead of actually attending to those underlying issues, you distract yourself by actually traumatically removing the need to do so. You traumatize yourself enough that you start shifting your behavior in a different direction.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but let me reframe it. If you need to literally zap yourself to wake up in the morning, you're like a slave who gets whipped if they don't do what they're told.
Yeah.
Except you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah. You're your slave. You're making yourself your bitch. And that sounds like really badass, right? And if you ask like a Navy SEAL, or it's very popular now to bring a military guy in and say, teach me how to be disciplined, because they know a lot about discipline. But you never ask yourself, well, can they help me be more fulfilled in life? Yeah, they get the result. If the result is more money, if the result is more girls, or the military guy, the result is we win this battle. Yes, they can deliver the result, but at what cost?
Yeah. Not only that, but I think if you talk to a lot of Navy SEALs, going through Hell Week is the classic example. They always say that they need some why, right? They need some reason why they're there, because no one is harder than the training, right? No one is harder than life, no matter how hard you are. And the biggest, toughest, strongest guys, when you're there in the mud at 4 a.m. or whatever it is, they're the ones who always quit, because no matter how fit you are, you're not fit enough. Right? It's the ones who have some reason to just keep on going. Those are the ones who make it. And not so much in terms of why, but going back to talking about push versus pull and which one is stronger. To give you a personal example, I have a personal trainer now, and a while ago we're in one session, and all the sessions are very, very hard. And they're great because I refuse to quit in front of someone else, right? And if I was by myself, I'd have quit within the first 20 minutes of that intensity of training. But there comes a point at which I can't just grit it out anymore, right? I can't just through raw will push through anymore. And at some point, I just surrender, in a sense, right? Because it's so tough, and I just sort of, instead of gritting through it, I just let go. And suddenly it becomes not so much, it doesn't become easier, but I can complete it, right? And I can go a lot further than I think I can. And it made me realize that, no matter how hard you are, trying to grit through it is never enough, right? But if you can surrender to the process, right? And if you can reframe it and you say, you know what, it hurts a lot, right? But I'm here for a reason. I'm paying this guy a lot of money, and I'm showing up here for a reason, right? Why? If I don't want to be there, I don't have to be there. I can stop, I can go home and cancel everything else. I'm there for a reason. I want to go through this because of the outcome, and therefore I should at least, even if I don't enjoy it, right, I should at least in some degree love the process. Yeah. But if you're just gritting it out and rep by rep and screaming, we talked about this in a previous podcast, right? The whole difference in Arnold training, and right, you have to enjoy the process. Well, not even enjoy is the wrong word, because a lot of times the process is hard, but you need to say, I'm doing this for a reason, and I love the process.
Yeah, even know the why. Yeah. And one of the reasons why somebody would need to use physical pain to motivate themselves to move forward on a regular basis is because they have a war in their selves. Like they're warring selves in them. There's a self that wants to be fit, and then there's a self that wants to relax, and they're at war. Okay, there's like literally, and in psychology you can see like people who look in the mirror a lot, they're activating their shadow selves. They're looking at a part like them that they could be that is not currently, or they're admiring, or the part of them that is not the way they look is looking at the way they look and thinking, whoa. Okay, so, or apart from like brushing your teeth in the mirror. I don't know why people brush their teeth in the mirror, but so. Unless you reconcile the conflict between those two selves, you're just going to be traumatizing one of the weaker self and, to get that result. And like you're saying, I think there's quite a lot of research too that shows it's not good in the long term. It's not sustainable. But there is a use for pain. So before we go too far, I wanted to address this. This is the big paradox, because there's a part of us that intuitively understands why pain is useful. So there's a very useful way to use pain as leverage on one part of yourself to get things done In fact, if you've been to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, you've gone through his intense experience. If you've been through my Invincible course in modules 5 and 7, I take you through a Scrooge process. And in fact, starting in module 1 of Invincible, I take you through a modified Scrooge. And it's the process of giving you something amazing and taking it away. That's module 1, Invincible. And then the other one is having you imagine your future life with continuing with this debilitating habit that you want to get rid of. And doing it that way and confronting how horrible your life would be if you kept at it for 20 years or something. What do you think is the difference between that use of pain and the one that we're attacking? Or do you think it's effective?
No, I mean, I think pain can be very useful, but I guess the distinction is, again, it's not about being in pain, right? So if I'm using a Pavlov bracelet, I'm using the pain directly as almost like a stimulus, right? Upfront conditioning to try and push me towards something. I think you need to realize that in most journeys, goals, whatever you want, pain is an inevitable part of the process, almost by definition, because again, if it were easy, you'd have already done it. And the reason why you haven't is because it's hard. And people who can achieve it, CEOs who can go through Hell Week, embrace the pain as part of the process, and you can reframe it and you say, I learned to some degree to love the pain because I know that it's moving me towards my goal. And maybe let me take that also one step further.
Then it's pain versus suffering.
Exactly, right? Pain is not suffering, right? As Tony Robbins will say. Suffering is a judgment you place on the pain. You can say pain is great because if I go to the gym, by definition, I'm there for the pain. I'm there to tear my muscles apart so they grow stronger. If you go to the gym and you don't feel anything, what's the point, right? If you don't feel tired after going to the gym, if your muscles don't hurt the next day, why were you there? Right? You are there for that exact reason. You are there for the pain. And once you realize that, then you can embrace that as part of the process. Mm-hmm. And again, to take that one step further, there's struggle in any hard thing you want to do in life. And a lot of times, as you say, people want to avoid struggle. We want to do what's easy, right? Struggle doesn't feel nice. And I think that there's a homeostatic force in our body that says, just avoid anything that's a bit too hard, anything that's tiring, anything that requires the struggle. And by definition, anything, not only do goals require struggle, but I would argue that the struggle is the point, right? Bruce Lee says this, you must constantly surpass your level, not to get anywhere, but because that's the whole point, right? If you're an athlete, the whole point is just to get better, not necessarily to win competitions. I think that's quite an interesting thought when you realize, wait a minute, that is the point.
Yeah, the point is the struggle. Yeah. And one important distinction in the exercises I was mentioning too about getting leverage, there's another one that I'm putting into a new course called Lifestyle Mastery, which is where you're attacking in an even stronger way than Scrooge, a debilitating habit, and it ends with I declarations. So basically what's happening is, and again, you see this in the Scrooge where you think ahead, 15 years ahead or 20 years ahead or 30 years ahead, if you stayed with this, would you like that? And this is to get you aligned with your whys, your reasons whys, aligned with your rational mind. So your mind says, no, I don't want to see this going forward. And then the pain is simply to say, I am not this way. That's not me. The real me is powerful. The real me is strong. The real me would do this. The real me loves. The real me is full of joy. The real me does not engage in these despicable habits. And then it's really not about the denial of selves in you, but coming out with who are you really? Who are you? And it's calling out in your unconscious who you are. And when you know who you are and you're comfortable with that and you're fully in that, that frees you up from using these other devices, let's say, I'm not just talking about Pavlov, but any other device to force you along the right lines. Like, for instance, overeating, indulging in comfort foods, spending hours on 9gag or something like that. These are all relatively new types of comfort. What are these? Comfort devices, comfort techniques. Instead of indulging in those, you know who you really are, and so you stay. So then you're motivated to stay in that true self. I see it as a major difference between just one part of you beating the other into submission versus the other versus on the other hand, declaring who you are and wanting that, and then going for that as a pull motivation towards that goal of that self.
Yeah. Well, again, maybe if I may, I think it'd be quite interesting to talk a bit more about that, the struggle, because that's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Right? We talk about the yin and the yang of life, right? The balance in all things. And a lot of people now will talk about how you want to be present, right? You want to love in the moment, you want to appreciate the moment, and that's what's the point. And one line I've always liked is about how, life is, everyone wants the happy life, right? But the happy life is made up of a string of happy moments. And most people are so focused on the happy life, they forgot to have the happy moments, which I think is absolutely true. But I want to talk today about the flip side, right? The yang side of things. And again, just as you need the love, what's on the other side, right? I think that is maybe ignored today a lot, right? The struggle, right? And again, the intrinsic desire to be more, right? To grow, independent of getting anywhere, right? Grow or die is the usual maxim. And we see this with animals, right? Animals aren't allowed to grow, they die, right? It's you can't just stay static. You must be moving or not. And I think that's true of people as well, right? A lot of people are so focused on now that, how do I get happy? How do I find fulfillment? What about the other side, right? I mean, we know that dopamine as a neurochemical comes from achieving things, but more specifically, achieving things after the struggle, right? So when you've tried something really, really hard and you've overcome something, you get dopamine. Testosterone, likewise, comes from challenge, very directly correlated. I mean, people take cocaine so that they can have more dopamine, right? That's how highly sought after that experience is. And that experience can come from you going to the gym, trying to lift something really heavy, something that you're not quite sure you'll be able to do, right? It's right on the edge of your ability, and you do it. And that feeling after you do it, that's raw dopamine coursing through your brain. And that's a very different feeling, I say qualitatively, than, let's call it the serotonin-induced like happy glow, right? That you get after sex, right? An orgasm. Right. It's very, and I think they're both, the two halves that make up life, right? The yin and the yang. Yeah. And that's something that I think a lot of people have forgotten. It's not, you can't just have the yin in your life. You need the yang, or it's not a balanced, fulfilled life.
Right. So a way to look at the grind life is, a way to look at the grind life is to see it as a kind of yang dominated life. Right. Yeah. So, the thing is, I guess, one of the issues is that the way that we live our lives, I'm talking about you and I know, and many of us in this room, is embracing the challenge, or seeking out challenges, embracing the struggles. And Ryan Holiday's excellent book, The Way is the Opposite. The obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the way. And that on that day-to-day getting up, going out and doing it, and it's hard work, but it's enjoyable hard work, because you see a greater purpose in it. It's meaningful to you. You're growing and learning as you do it. And that's often why achievers actually, there are two types of achievers. This is a good segue to that point. There are two types of achievers I've seen in life. There's the one type that I used to be, and that was the one that was really concerned about grades. And I was that achiever all the way through until sophomore year of my undergrad, when I found a book called What Smart Students Know by Adam Robinson, which freed me up in terms of my attitude and my mindset around learning. But up until that point, I was really focused on the grades, on the result. And I didn't understand that in order to get the superlative, like the top score, not just a really good score, but a top score, you'd need to actually, in a competitive field, you need to actually lose yourself in the process of learning. So then it's not about what's going to be on the exam. You're not, or what's the essay requirement. Although those are important parts of the game you need to play. But instead you're focusing on what you're learning, what you're going to take away in your memory after the exam is done. Now, as a university professor for so long, I knew that most of the students after the exam, a month later, if I asked them anything on the exam, they'd have a hard time answering it. And pretty much the only ones who would continue with it are the ones who actually have another course with me. So they know they got to remember something. But even then I'm shocked. Like, we just covered this last semester, remember? Because they were studying for that end goal, and once that end goal was achieved, they let go. They didn't need to use it any further. And I understand that, but that's why they're not top students. And in fact, I didn't know how rare of a student I and my friends were until I became a professor. And it was so rare to actually get a student. Because the standard I held for all of us, I thought was pretty high, but not super high. But one of the things I realized is the reason our standards, we met those standards so easily doing, like for instance, one thing we would do is you want to stay always a week or two ahead, and then you want to read around all the other readings. So whatever your professor assigns, look for 3 times more than that and read around that. So obviously read the assigned work plus at least 3 other sources. And then come to your professor with questions that are related to the external reading. So you could ask about a debate in a related field, and that's not even part of the course. And your exams, when you write in a closed book exam, cite your sources. Put a freaking footnote there, and then put the author, title, bracket, Cambridge University Press, comma, the date of publication, unbracket, and if you can remember the page number, that's even better. And if you do that, like, this was just sort of like, if you can do this, it'd be great. Let's try. But I knew most students never even thought of it. They'd be happy to just get to the end of the exam. And the reason I was able to do that, and my friends and I, were because we stopped seeing it as studying as a thing we had to do. We did it. We learned to lose ourselves in the process of it. And when it came to learning how to attract women, it was the same situation. There were these guys who look for the goal. How do I get a kiss? Whatever the goals were, they were closes of some kind, right? Kiss close, full close, number of close. I don't know, like multiple relationship close. And they're always looking for that end goal, and if they do get it, it's always fleeting. It's not consistent. They can't keep it up. But the ones who lose themselves in the process of that life, they become it, and then they don't have to strive to get the result anymore. They are that, and it comes effortlessly. And that became the secret for me. Like working out was another thing too. It's at the beginning, if you see it as something that you need to force yourself to do to get the result, and I get it. It's easy to do this on Instagram or someplace like, you can always do counterintuitive marketing. So it's easy to say, I know everyone says you're supposed to love the workout, but if you're going to love that, then if you're going to wait until that time, you're never going to start working out. And then that's why Pavlok and that sort of thing is so intuitive for these people. It's like, it's supposed to suck. You got to do it anyway. And all these people love that message because they're like, that matches the neurotic voice in their head from childhood. Yeah, this is supposed to suck. School sucks. You got to do it anyway. They're so used to it. They're like, oh, this is familiar. This is something that resonates with me. And it's really a false, debilitating fact or belief. It will actually make it harder in the long run to sustain that kind of growth and progress. So when it comes to working out, if you see it as I have to force myself to grow into it, then you're not going to actually keep it up. And so you see this over and over. And it wasn't until I embraced, no matter if I got the result, like I got to measure the result. Am I gaining this muscle, losing the fat? But I would realize that if I didn't look at the end result for a while, and I just lost myself in the working out, and then instead of checking my fucking weight every day or every week even, I'll check it 2 months from now, or 3 months from now, and I'll forget about the goal and just lose myself in the process of it. Then it becomes an enjoyable thing. But if I keep checking my weight every day, it's going to become this neurotically obsessive thing.
Yeah, and to all those people, I'd also ask why, right? So if you find it so hard to motivate for you to go to the gym, why, right? Why is it that all those other things, that resistance is so much bigger than your desire? I mean, are you sure you really want to go to the gym? Obviously not, right? Otherwise you would have done it already.
These are the warring selves I was talking about. Yeah.
Right? Where is the conflict within that is preventing you? Maybe you should
got to
think
get
of
that self-awareness, man. That's the whole thing. Self-awareness. Get arriving at the self-awareness, and it's so hard. It's hard for me. I don't know why I say it's so hard for me, as if I'm some special person, but I devote my life at the moment to learning my own psychology and other people's psychology. But it's even hard for me, even though I do it full time, because it's hard to see yourself. And that's why it really helps to have a good therapist or a good coach who can help you think through and reflect back and ask you the tough questions. And also to trigger you, because it's easy to theoretically say, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'll work out. Yeah, but when push comes to shove, what are you really? And until you get that push or the shove, you don't know who you are. And that's part of what they're doing. They need to get you there emotionally.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about all those people who say, I don't like school, but you just have to do it. I'd ask, why? Why do you have to do it?
Exactly.
And well, maybe we can open this up in a bit. But I mean, see, the thing is, if all you want to do is lead a comfortable, quote unquote, life where your Maslowian needs are fulfilled. In today's world, it's really not that hard, right? Never mind just the basics like food, shelter, but you can get unlimited entertainment by just turning on Netflix, whatever it is, $10.99 a month, right? And you can just sit there forever in some level of comfort.
Or if you're on YouTube for free.
For free. And I mean, we're even talking in some countries about like universal basic income, right? Just give everyone enough so that they can live. So that level of life is pretty easy. So why? Why do you want more? There must be some reason why you say that. Everyone intuitively accepts that you need more, that you need some kind of struggle in your life, right? You have to go to school. Why? Right? But people don't seem to think that through.
Yeah. Well, I think we're not evolved to naturally be in the now, be present, because we're evolved to really give a shit about our survival and our reproduction. So if you think about, let's enjoy the sound of the rain on the trees, on the leaves right now, and the wind on my face. You probably get eaten. Well, actually, that's an exaggeration, but you wouldn't go and do what you need to do to build the cave or whatever. I just so getting your purpose and figuring out the meaning behind it. I always think is your true purpose isn't some job. It's not a career. It's not the work you do. That could be part of your purpose. But it's got to be, or it could be, related to it. But it's got to be something in the now, because that would be the only thing that truly fulfills. It's always when you ask yourself, when did I think, yeah, this is it. This is what life's about. And if you think about that, it's always something in the now. Because you never go like, yeah, this is what life's about, dreaming about life 5 years in the future. No, it's like some experience you had in the now. And what we all forget is, in our constant striving to beat ourselves up, is that there is already a potentially fully fulfilled self already in you. And then if you can get to that, then these other things that are nice to have, like let's say you want to lose some weight, or maybe gain some muscle, or make some extra bucks, or maybe make a lot more extra bucks, whatever those things are that you think your happiness depends on. If you don't get those, you're not going to be happy. But in fact, if you, like you were saying, just take a step back and realize you actually have all of the resources and the things that make you in you already, and the things that truly bring happiness aren't going to be those external goods. They're always going to be something that you can experience in the now, and that you've already experienced. So in the Lifestyle Mastery course I'm releasing soon, there's a whole module on the meaning and purpose of your life. And I don't tell anybody what the purpose of life is, but I lead them through a guided meditation that's incredibly powerful, that asks them questions like, what was a time in your life when you thought to yourself, this is what life's about? And whenever that prompt comes up, the inevitable answer is something in the now, an experience in the present. And one thing I wanted to mention before we leave the Pavlov discussion, if you think about how neuroticism is created, right? Like, imagine this, like every time you did something wrong, you did this. Like, Johnny, don't touch the water. Oh, shit. Like, imagine somebody doing that to themselves, like drinking and then slapping themselves. I shouldn't have drunk it. Slap. Like, oh, hey, like it's no big deal. Like, hey, how's your beer? Like, there's this hypnotist who hypnotizes this guy so that he's with his girlfriend, so that every time he thinks a sexual thought about a woman, he's going to slap himself. And she thought this would be really fun, but he's just slapping himself left, right, like the whole time. He's in this a cafe in a courtyard in Europe, and he kept slapping himself, but he's hypnotized to do it, so he doesn't stop or anything. He doesn't notice. He's just like, oh yeah, I'll have a salad. I'll have the chicken salad. And he just keeps laughing himself. Like every time a girl walks by, he's just like that. And she's just like, oh my God. It's just so many times that she couldn't get mad. It was just like funny. But imagine you did that normally. That's Pavlov. Like you look at somebody like who walks around slapping themselves for no reason and thinking this is the great way to train yourself not to do stuff. Like they're at the Krispy Kreme about to eat. Okay. And you see somebody do that, you think, this guy's got problems. He needs to be going to the insane asylum, right? He's got issues. He needs to see a therapist. No. Like you wouldn't do that normally, but you'll wear a fucking wristband that slaps you in the fucking face. It's even more painful than that. And you just think it's normal. Okay, I'm going to zap myself right now. Just fucking slap yourself then. And be more transparent about it. In fact, it'd be better if you dropped down and did 100 push-ups. Every time you needed to wake up or avoid the pigging out, just drop down and do 100 push-ups then. At least you gain some fucking muscle instead of like doing this to yourself. But this is how neuroticism was created. Now there's a whole generation of life hackers who are they lose sight of the goal. Quantified, what is it called? Quantified self. That movement, they're a big player in it, but it's an even bigger movement. Is trying. Oh, they're the ones who are trying to elongate life. Is it biohacking? Yeah, right. So there's a whole subculture that's really fascinating, and they're experimenting with all different types of alternative means. And they never. It seems like there's no discussion around why should I live longer? What will I do with this extra time? It's just this fetish on living longer, as if it in itself was an intrinsically good thing. And we discussed this when we talked about the denial of death. That will also be in Lifestyle Mastery.
Well, Seneca has this great line when he says, life is long enough if you know how to live it.
Yeah. Yes. That's a great... Man, you have all these great quotes. I got to write down Henry quotes.
Yeah. Well, and another one about, in what's that movie? Troy, when Achilles is with Briseis, I think, in the tent, and they're talking about gods and something, and he says the gods envy us because we're mortal, right? And it only has meaning because we're mortal. Right? You will be here now in this moment, and we'll never be here again, and that's why it has meaning. If you had infinite life, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, we discussed the issue of the Lord of the Rings elves and what their life was like, what must have been like, and the choice of when to die. And why they would wantonly, it seems, enter battle. Because the downside for an elf who's immortal, to die from an arrow, it just seems like really stupid. Whereas if you're a dwarf who lives 50 years, hey, go for it. You're going to die soon anyway. Go out in a blaze of glory. But if you're an immortal, you really want to think about it. What was that quote again? Seneca said, the life is never too long if you know how to live it, or life's never too short. Life is long enough if you know how to live it. Well, I think that's a great quote to end it on. I'm going to put that into an Instagram quote card. Follow me on Instagram. We're just starting that up. We're revving that thing up. David Tian, Ph.D. Username. Also, we're going to have a Facebook group for this podcast. We'll have all that info somewhere on this page that you're watching this thing or listening to this. And Henry, how do they get a hold of you? How do they find you?
Well, you can find me on my personal website at henrychong.com or my company website. And I have a newsletter every Sunday that I write. And you can sign up for that at Fusang, FUSANG.co/newsletter.
Excellent. Fusang.co/newsletter. An awesome newsletter. I always look forward to reading your musings. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Or people, thanks so much for listening. And we'll be back next time. Hey, it's David again. Before you go, a couple last things. First, all the show notes and links to resources can be found at davidtianphd.com/DTPHD Podcast. Or you can just go to davidtianphd.com and find it through the top navigation menu. Second, if you'd like to interact with me or other like-minded fans of the podcast, then join our private DTPHD Podcast Facebook group. We've got an awesome community of intelligent, wise individuals from literally all around the world. You can send a join request to the group using the link you'll find in the show notes of every podcast at davidtianphd.com/DTPHD Podcast. Click the link, log into your Facebook, and then click to join. We approve join requests every day. So go to davidtianphd.com and click the link to join. See you inside our group.